Hey, good morning, everybody. Good afternoon to those of you on the East Coast. Welcome to a special edition Survive in Advance on Memorial Day. It'll be Cole, Hanna, and I today discussing the ramifications of the four-game sweep after a two-game loss by the Toronto Raptors to capture their first ever NBA Finals appearance, heading into this Thursday, starting up going against the Golden State Warriors. So we'll get to Cole in just a minute, but first I want to always thank our sponsor for the program, mybookie.ag, where currently we are offering you, if you go to our website and book it through our website, type in the code TGTN, MyBookieAG will match you $300 for your first $300 you put in, thus giving you $600, and you can make some informed bets and wagers on the NBA Finals based on the vital information you're going to hear today and for the rest of this week on the NBA playoffs. So with that being said, Cole, welcome. Do you have a good Memorial Day, or are you still having Memorial Day, actually?
Yeah. Been a good weekend. Indy 500 here, obviously, is a big thing. It's been a good weekend. I've never been that into the race. It's more of just the atmosphere around it, I guess. But everyone says
it's interesting because it's the pageantry that kind of goes with it that makes it fun, really.
Exactly.
Obviously, all the stuff that goes on before the singing of Back Home Again in Indiana and all the celebrities coming out. We had Christian Bale and
Matt Damon
waving the flag and some celebrities there. Looked like Dale Earnhardt Jr. was trying to hijack the pace car, and he just wanted to race the pace car, which probably would have kept up with some of those guys. I had Scott Dixon in the pool, and how bad it was for me. I was kissed to death that I drew him in the pool, and he got beat by 7 men.
Yeah.
So, the last car on the lead lap. But you settle in, and the first couple laps are fun. Diving into the first turn with all 33 cars, all bunched up together is wild. But then it spreads out, and then it pretty well. It was a pretty clean race too for the most part. Which I think it was on record pace for a while. Does Indianapolis? Did you guys get to see it live there this year because NBC took over, or was it still on a tape delay?
No, still blacked out for us. So unfortunately, we didn't get to watch it. Yeah.
That was the bane of my existence when I lived in Indianapolis. Now, out here we turned it on. My day consisted of getting up at 5 in the morning, turning on the Formula One race in Monaco, shifting right into 8 o'clock in the morning, and the pre-race for the Indy 500, starting for the Indy 500 right around 9 o'clock, and then winding it up with the Coca-Cola 600, the NASCAR race. And I was pretty well auto-raced out by the end of the day.
You had a full day of racing then, sounds like.
It was kind of like, it was kind of like sitting there and watching all 3 episodes of Lord of the Rings back to back to back. And all 3 of those are like 3-hour epics. So
that's a full. That's a full day's task right there.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Okay, NBA playoffs. Now, a Friday show, I don't think you were on. I caught some gruff for calling Toronto a Cinderella team. I read off the dictionary's definition of Cinderella team, and it fit. But there were many people in the gruff I caught was that given the fact that Toronto had the second best record in the NBA, that they were not a Cinderella team. And I meant no disparaging comments about them being a Cinderella team. It's just that when you look up the definition of Cinderella, it says a team, a group or a team, generally a sports team, that comes out of nowhere and wins unexpectedly, wins an unexpected game, series, or whatever, and wins. Was Toronto a Cinderella in this endeavor with Milwaukee, or was it just too good, but the 2 best records in the NBA going at each other?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd call them a Cinderella team just because they were the 2 seed in the East. Obviously, they're going to have a home court advantage against Golden State by virtue of their record. So they definitely had a very good season. I think definitely, though, you'd argue that at the very least it was a pretty big upset. I don't think many people saw that coming, especially considering how they lost game 1 and 2 by a combined 30 points in those games. And for them to just bounce back and win 4 straight, I think that was obviously a huge, huge upset from how people thought the series was going to go. I think a lot of people, me included, thought the series was over after those first couple games, or that Toronto was going to be hard-pressed and maybe they could win in 7 games. But to win 4 consecutive games when Milwaukee had not dropped more than 2 games all year long in a row, it was shocking. It was definitely shocking. But, what I think a lot of it comes down to is I think a lot of people underestimated the impact Kawhi Leonard can have and the caliber of player he is, and not just what he does offensively, but Toronto made a switch there in about Game 3, Game 4, and what they did was they put Kawhi Leonard on Giannis and almost full-time defensively, and I thought he really, really limited him offensively, at least as much as you can reasonably expect someone to limit a guy like Giannis on the offensive end. I think he's a complete game changer, and, though Toronto was kind of overlooked just by virtue of dropping those first 2 games, especially Game 2 in blowout fashion, they probably should not have been overlooked. I think people kind of jumped off their bandwagon very quickly, and by virtue of that, it was definitely a very surprising upset.
And I guess given the fact of, again, like you said, Milwaukee starts off 2-0, we think this is going to be a cruise. Some of us are talking sweep. We're giving our friends from Canada some grief over this, and they're saying just wait. And sure enough, they were right. Was this more of a failure of Milwaukee or just an overachievement of Toronto? Or either? Was it just a great matchup that the teams were more evenly matched than we believed them to be?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, I think you have to give it to Toronto. Credit them. Kawhi Leonard stepped up. I thought, Giannis is in the discussion for an MVP race, but he was not the best player in the series. It was Kawhi Leonard. And frankly, I don't think it was really close. The big thing we were challenging Toronto on, we were saying, do they have a shot in this series, is are they going to get the help around Kawhi Leonard? Are they going to get the guys stepping up around him to take pressure off Kawhi? Because that was the big thing for Milwaukee in the first couple games. We were going through, just the depth of that team, how many different guys they have that can hurt you, and Toronto wasn't getting that help around them. And credit Toronto, those guys stepped up. Fred VanVleet goes for 21 points in Game 5, 7 of 9 from behind the arc in that game, comes back, scores 14 in Game 6, goes 4 of 5 from behind the arc. Kyle Lowry really stepped up in those later games down the stretch. He had kind of struggled through the first few games of the series. Another guy I think deserves a mention is Norman Powell. I thought he stepped up and played some really, really good games in this series, and no one really expected that out of him. Pascal Siakam had some good offensive games and kind of showed what he can do in the offensive end. I think it's a disappointing performance for Milwaukee, especially how much they were limited on the offensive end. And that 4-game sweep, you got to look at their offensive output. This was the number 1 team in the NBA in points per game, scoring 118 points. And they get into this series in 3 of those 4 losses, in normal, not counting the overtime in the Game 3 victory Toronto had, but they failed to pass 100 points in 3 of those 4 games during normal time. They obviously got over 100 time when they went to double overtime in Game 3, and they ended up scoring, I believe, 112 in that game, but 16 or 17 of those points came in overtime, so they would have been held under 100 in that game as well. Offensively, they just could not crack Toronto. They couldn't find a way to get around them, and it's just kind of, by virtue of how that was, I think a lot of credit has to go to Kawhi Leonard by limiting Giannis and Antetokounmpo. He was an absolute dominant force, not just on the offensive end, but the defensive end as well in this series.
In this far into the series, should one player be able to beat you? And basically, and I want to say this, I think what happened here was Kawhi Leonard beat Milwaukee. Now, in support of that, somebody, as you mentioned a bunch of them, somebody off the bench or another starter stepped up, and they spread it around as to who stepped up in what game, correct? It wasn't the same player. It was a different player in every game but Kawhi Leonard always had support from somewhere. But when you look at the moxie of the Bucks and the depth that they carry, and should this have happened? Should Milwaukee have been better suited to deal with Kawhi Leonard and to take some points away? Now, I know some of the theory of some other people is you go and you let him get all his points, you shut everybody else down. Well, the Bucks weren't able to do that either. They weren't able to do that. So it goes back to did Milwaukee, should one player be able to dominate a series the way Kawhi did? Two, did Milwaukee just kind of look at it like, hey, we pulled the first two out of our hats. We'll go get one in Toronto. We'll be up 3-1, and we'll come back and win this thing in 5 in Milwaukee. Did they kind of get it into that funk after the first 2 wins? Maybe those came too easily for them.
It's possible. I do agree. You can't let one guy kill you like that. You've got to look at some double teams, different things to get the ball out of Kawhi's hands, get it into someone else, make someone else beat you. They couldn't really do that. I think a lot of the issue Milwaukee had was a lot of their, when you look at their team, the guys that you thought were going to step up and play great basketball and had been doing so all year really kind of struggled in a lot of those games. I look at a guy like Chris Middleton, who really, really had some tough shooting games. What stands out to me is that Game 3 when he goes 3 of 16 from the field. There's another game, I believe it was Game 5 or Game 6. I believe it was Game 5 where he goes 2 of 9 from the field. That's their second leading scorer. You can't get that out of him. I mean, you need better games out of him. Offensively, again, I think you can talk about getting the ball out of Kawhi Leonard's hands. That's definitely fair, something to criticize because they had to get the ball out of Kawhi's hands. He killed them every time he got the ball. He was a dominant offensive force. But to me, the big thing in the series was Milwaukee's inability to really get going offensively. Again, the number 1 team in the NBA in points per game, and they really, really struggled to score in this series. And, that's, again, I kind of mentioned this earlier, but to me, that's really the most impressive thing about Kawhi Leonard in this series is it was not just what he did offensively, it's also what he did defensively. Toronto and give credit to Toronto, I don't think that's all just Milwaukee struggling to score. Toronto had a very, very, very good defense all year long. So credit to their defense, because that's something they've been doing for most of the season. But, I agree. I think there may have been a little bit of they thought maybe we can take a game off here or there because, we're up 2-0. We blew them out. We're the better team. We can just flip a switch. And, It doesn't always work out that way, does it?
No, obviously there's a great case in point. And kind of one of the things that I felt was by not defensively trying to thwart Leonard, and maybe they were. Maybe they just couldn't do it. Maybe Leonard was just that good, but there was no pressure put on the other support players to have to step up.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? They stepped up, but they did it more. Well, Kawhi's giving us 37, 38, 39. So if I dump in 15 and somebody else dumps in 15 or I get 21, because I think in the last game, I think that Toronto had 2 players, starters that didn't score, didn't they? Or they had at least one.
Yeah, they had Danny Green didn't score, goes 0 from the field. I think Marc Gasol scored
He's like 6 points or something like that.
Yeah, nothing significant.
Yeah, right. So, but I think the mistake there was for those that live with the argument, let's just let Kawhi get everything he is but shut everybody else down. I think by trying to do that, they didn't put any pressure on the other guys to have to score. And maybe their mentality would have been different if they see Kawhi struggling and all of a sudden then they're like, I've got to score. Not that I have the luxury of scoring because he's already given us half our point production or between assists because, Kawhi was doing double-doubles and triple-triples in there.
Yeah.
So he not only was giving you 36, 37 points, he was giving you 10, 11, 12 assists a game as well. He was definitely playing a consummate basketball game, and I think the flaw with Milwaukee was I think they got a little overconfident in themselves, possibly. They got taken out of things, definitely. and I think they didn't put enough pressure on Kawhi, allowed him to run amok on him. And, then Kawhi just elevated his game. Then he started playing great defense on Gianni, like he said. And then they were just this had not happened to this team all year long. I don't think Milwaukee he said they had not lost 2 games in a row all season long. So how much adversity had they really faced all season?
Yeah.
I mean, they're now in the thralls of a 3-game losing streak. They're coming back, or after Toronto wins 2 games in Jurassic Park, I think that's what they call it. And all of a sudden now, Game 5 is kind of a must-win for them, which it turned out not to be. And I mean, but how much adversity had Milwaukee been in that entire season? So I think that Milwaukee probably will come back stronger for this next year. Their team seems to be, from the looks of it, staying pretty much intact. I don't think I think even Gianni's not eligible till the following year for the Supermax contract or anything like that, isn't he? I think he still has another year to go to get that.
Yeah. So the big one, I believe, maybe I could be wrong here, but I'm pretty sure the only big free agent for Milwaukee of their core top players, I think, is Chris Middleton, but as I mentioned, he struggled pretty mightily in this series at times. So we'll have to see.
Yeah, he didn't make the All-Star team, did he?
I do not believe so, no.
Yeah. If he didn't make the All-Star, then he wouldn't be eligible for the Supermax contract. That's part of the
he's definitely – he's not. I think actually he did make the All-Star team, now that I think about it. But, he's not a Supermax player, I don't think.
No, so nobody's going to –
he's not going to be eligible for that.
Let me see. Well, he's not on the 3rd team. He's not on the 2nd team. He did not make the All-Star team.
No, he made the All-Star team, the All-NBA team. He didn't.
I got All-NBA first team is Curry, Harden, George,
Johnny. The All-Star team and the All-NBA team are different teams.
No, this is the All-NBA team. Yeah, it's the All-NBA team.
Yeah. So
Middleton's not on the All-NBA team.
Yeah, no, Middleton made the All-Star team.
All-Star. Yeah, well, no, you have to be on the All-NBA team.
Yeah, for the Supermax. He's not a Supermax player. Yeah.
And we'll cover that probably maybe Friday. We'll come back on Friday and do a review of the first game, kind of get a feel for how it is. But we should talk about the Supermax contracts because basically we know that Klay Thompson got screwed. Well, I don't know whether he got screwed or not. He didn't become eligible because he did not make the All-NBA team. And there was some fervor over that. A lot of these guys were looking at the Supermax things, but we'll save that for Friday. Anything else to wrap up? I mean, to me, this just seemed like it wasn't probably truly a Cinderella victory for the Raptors. They were the 2nd best record in the NBA. Kawhi Leonard, I think the Cinderella almost comes where, and I don't know, maybe Kawhi was playing this way all year long. I don't know. Obviously, he had to be playing well for them to post the 2nd best record in the NBA, and that means they're facing the Bucks 5 or 6 times. Yeah, they would have faced them probably 4 or 5 games this season. Yeah, because you only play home and away on the West Coast teams if you're an East Coast team. Yet you play everybody else, I think 3 and 3 or something like that. Yeah, 3 or 4. I know there's conference breakups, divisional breakups of how much you play everybody, but they faced the Bucks a number of times during the course of the season, and to still come out with the 2nd best record in the NBA. Signals they probably were not a Cinderella team by nature, but nobody expected them to win this, especially being down 2-0. Yeah, at that point in time, we all had penciled in Warriors versus Bucks, and we were whether we were looking forward to that. But now you're looking forward to a bunch of unknowns. So now let's get into the finals. What do we got? Just kind of dig to it on a 10,000-foot level here. We'll get a first feel, I think, Thursday night, first game at Toronto. First, start off with that. How big of a disadvantage for Golden State to have to open up at Toronto? Does it matter for a team like that who's been there 5 times before? You got a coach who's played in 10 NBA. I didn't realize this. Kerr has played either as a coach or coached as a coach, as a player or a coach, 10 NBA finals. Yep. That's – I think part of that is exactly why I don't think this will really matter for Golden State. They have,
not just Steve Kerr, but all up and down that roster, they've had guys. I mean, again, the team's been to 5 straight NBA finals. I mean, that's crazy. They have a lot of guys with finals experience. They know how it goes. I don't think they're really going to be rattled playing home or away. Now, I think it is a boon for Toronto. I think the Toronto guys will look at it and say, we get to play in our home court, and they need to take advantage of that. They cannot go back to Golden State down 0-2, obviously. I mean, they need to win. You know, preferably you'd like to get 2 of those games. That might not be possible when you're playing a team like Golden State with, you know, how much pure talent that team has. You know, a lot of it, we still don't know the status of Kevin Durant. We don't know if he's going to play or not. You know, for the most part, we expect he's going to be back at some point in this series, whether that's game 1 or whether that's game, 3 or 4. We don't know.
That becomes 2 parts, one of 2 parts of the $10 question there.
Yeah.
Draymond Green being one of them and Klay Thompson being the other. Let's talk about these guys. Does he come back? I mean, do we want him back? Do we want Durant back? And then who do you replace him with? Do you bring him back as a starter? Do you nurse him along and get him some minutes? I mean, the team has played exceptionally well without him. There's the argument that Durant hurts this team a little bit by seeking the ball more and keeping it out of Curry's hands enough times. I don't know that I buy that. This team, having gone to 5 NBA championships, plays as a basketball team well together. But who do you pull out of the lineup if Kevin Durant comes back? This team's been functioning at a high level. And then the other question and I'll let you address both of them here. Klay Thompson, is he frustrated about not making the All-NBA team and not being eligible for the Supermax contract, or is he big enough and above that and just put winning another championship first and foremost? So start with Durant. I mean, should they start him if he's healthy? Should they just wean him back into the lineup and get him as many minutes without? Because an injury like that lingers like crazy.
Yeah. Well, ultimately, a lot of that's going to depend on how healthy he is when he comes back. Is he 100%? Is he 95%? How do they feel about his effectiveness? If they think he's 100%, I think they'll take Iguodala out of the starting lineup. They'll put Kevin Durant, they'll insert him back in, and that'll be the end of it. And they'll go back to the lineup they were so dominant with the past couple years. I want to be honest here, Steve. I don't think they could get away with playing a healthy, 100% healthy Kevin Durant off the bench, purely because I'm not sure Durant's ego would allow that, honestly. I mean, I think this is a guy that's very obsessed with his self-image. This is a guy who literally made a fake Twitter account to defend himself. Like, that image to him has been a very, very important thing to him, So to have him come off the bench, I don't know if he'd allow that. That might be to him just get him out the door quicker, which I think a lot of people think might be inevitable this offseason regardless. But, you never know. But I think if he's healthy, if he's 100% healthy. Now, I think Golden State, there's certainly, when Durant's not in the lineup, there's certainly more ball movement in the lineup. Klay Thompson steps up. Steph Curry has really stepped up and been a dominant force. I think a lot of people kind of underappreciated what he does for them on the basketball court. Now with Kevin Durant out, they really got to see exactly what he brings to the table. But I don't know if I would say they're better without Durant or if they shouldn't play Durant. He's such a dominant scorer. He can score in any situation, any part of the court. I think you want him on the court regardless. Sure. I think if he's healthy, we'll see him start for that team. As for the second part, for the Klay Thompson thing, I wouldn't worry too much about him. I would not worry about him. I don't think he's going to get selfish and try to prove a point or whatever. I think Klay Thompson's always been a guy willing to sacrifice his role, his stats. I do think he should have made one of those All-NBA teams. Anytime you have a team that's gone to 5 straight NBA finals, it's not just because they have a couple All-NBA guys. There's been a lot of teams that have a couple All-NBA caliber players. That's not how that happens. It's not just you have a couple really good guys and the rest are just, solid players. But I think for the most part, he understands that, for them to win a championship, that he needs to play the role that he's played all season long, not go out there and say, I'm going to prove everyone wrong, I'm going to go for 50. or whatever, wants to do and try to, take over offensively. I think he's a team player. I think he's always been a team player. I think he's a big reason why Golden State works is him and Steph Curry are willing to sacrifice their workload so guys like Durant can come in and play and get their bigger workload. But I wouldn't worry too much about Klay Thompson, being selfish or trying to prove a point or anything like that.
All right, looking at the starting lineups, they look pretty well matched up fairly evenly. I would probably give the edge to Golden State just a little bit. Do they risk again putting Leonard on Curry and trying to do to Curry what they did to Johnny? Do they go ahead and stick him back on him? I mean, you're talking about two different positions.
Yeah.
I noticed that Johnny tended to stand around a lot more, which kind of gave Leonard some breaks defensively. Curry doesn't stand around much.
Exactly.
He's working to get himself open a lot, and you got your best offensive weapon chasing him all around the basketball court. Is that the move you anticipate happening? Is that Leonard goes on Curry?
Yeah, so that's going to be really interesting to watch how exactly they play Kawhi Leonard defensively. And again, I think a lot of that's going to fit and depend on, where's Durant. If Durant's in the lineup, I think you'll see Kawhi guard Durant. Just that natural 3 versus 3 on the defensive end. If Durant is missing the first couple games or misses the first game, which kind of is what it sounds like, but you never know, what they do with Kawhi defensively is going to be really interesting. Obviously, Curry's such a dominant shooter. Kawhi, he has the athleticism to stay with him. He has the length to bother his shot. He's going to be the best defensive player in this series. You put him on Curry and try to limit him. But you kind of worry about him, chasing him all around the court off screen and all that. Are you going to tire him out for the offensive end? That's a worry. I think we'll see – so if there's no Durant, I think we'll see Kawhi play stretches of the game on Curry. I would not anticipate him being a full-time primary defender on Steph Curry. I think they could do similar things with Siakam if they wanted to in the defensive end, is put him because he's, again, a bigger guy that, he can use his length to disrupt Steph Curry.
Mm-hmm.
But, they've also got to worry about Klay Thompson as well from behind the arc. But I wouldn't anticipate him at least starting out the series as a primary full-time defender on Steph Curry. I think you'll see him guard him at stretches, maybe key stretches of the game, but probably not full-time.
Do the Raptors have the luxury of taking like a Siakam or maybe a Lowry or somebody and just saying, look, we don't care if you score a point, just shut down Curry and run Curry into the ground? We're going to rotate, and should they possibly maybe platoon against Curry and keep a fresh body on him at all times? Well, I watched it. I don't see Curry get tired. I mean, he catches his breaks.
No.
But he's moving when he has to. He economizes his movement. He moves when he has to move, but he doesn't waste movement. He's a master at that. So I don't know how well that'll work, but do you take somebody like a Siakam and say, look, you stick to him. I want to know what Phil's saying from the movie Hoosiers. I want to know what brand of chewing gum he's chewing. Yeah. Because I'm playing defensively so strong. And I still think the Warriors have ample firepower. And Curry's not going to be somebody, like you said, that's going to sit there and say, I'm pouting because I'm not getting my 35 points. I think he could care less if he scores. You look at the Houston game where he scored 0 in the first half, came back and drilled, 35 or something in the second half, because he had to. They weren't going to win the game if he didn't do it. It's not like he wanted to do that, but they really had no choice. So bench-wise, how important are the benches going to play in this?
Well, they're going to be very important. I think it's – so going back to Golden State Portland, I thought the big thing Portland was going to have to do in that series was Golden State's bench has been their weakness here for a long time. They don't have dominant forces off the bench. And the question is really, is it their bench is weak, or is it just their starting lineup is so damn good that you just don't even notice it? And the big thing was Golden State got good production off their bench. Honestly, just as much production really as Portland did when they have key players like, Rodney Hood coming off the bench, Evan Turner coming off the bench. And Golden State's bench held their own. Credit to guys like Kevin Looney, who had, double-double performances for them off the bench. Sean Livingston's played very well for them off the bench. But, again, the big thing for Toronto is they had some big performances off the bench in the Eastern Conference Finals. They had guys who they didn't give them the production off the bench that they did. Toronto might not win that series. Again, Fred VanVleet goes, I think 11 of 14 from behind the arc in Game 5 and 6. They're going to need that from him. He's going to have to come and be a good shooting presence off the bench. I mentioned him earlier as well. Norman Powell had some really, really good games in the series. He kind of changed that series. He was like the first guy that I looked at, stepped up around Kawhi when they were kind of struggling to get some help around him. So, the benches are going to be very, very important. It's actually kind of – neither team plays a very deep bench. It's
both
really
are 8
three,
players.
It's mostly
I looked at stats,
Yeah, but it's mostly 3 guys off the bench for each team. It's going to be VanVleet, I think, is the big one I'm looking to. He's got to be he has to use his shooting ability. He can't get lost. He can't go 0-5 from behind the arc. He's got to shoot. Obviously you're not going to go 11 of 14. That's not realistic to expect from a guy. I mean, not even Steph Curry is going to be able to consistently do something like that. But just use his shooting ability, spread the floor, open things up for Kawhi, I think is going to be a big thing.
Yeah, I see a couple things here. First off, I find it very difficult to believe that Durant's not going to be in the game at some point at some availability. And I agree with you. If he's going to play, put a uniform on and get out, he's going to start. Now, the upside there is that means they take one of their current starters and strengthen their bench. All of a sudden, Golden State's bench gets one player deeper and stronger. Even if you give limited minutes to Durant, which may be all he can give you, but still, he's such a game-changing player. You don't want to go without him if you don't have to go without him. But it may be limited, but he strengthens the bench. The other thing I noticed about Golden State's bench is they made contributions, but I don't really think they were ever taxed. They weren't forced to make contributions. You know what I'm saying? Nobody taxed them because Curry was playing bad or Klay Thompson was playing bad or any of the other starters were playing bad. They didn't really get taxed badly. Like, if we don't get something out of you, we're going to lose. So that if they can go in with that kind of mentality, that kind of freshness about coming in and just playing more loose basketball is coming off the bench and maybe igniting a spark or things like that. I think that there's a little bit of an advantage by Golden State there, whereas I think with Leonard being so much a part of the offensive production of the Raptors and with Gasol and Green and those guys being kind of, off and on scorers and players, you don't get consistent points out of them. When they're on, they're deadly. I mean, they're very effective in the game, but the problem is you're not getting it consistently out of those two. So you're going to see probably with the Warriors lineup, I would think you're probably going to see Toronto's bench taxed more than you would the Warriors bench.
Yeah.
So the $10 question is Durant. I mean, that's the one kind of, and you're probably not going to know that until they come out on the court Thursday in Toronto, whether he's going to suit up or not. I did read where the owner of the Warriors said it is his full intent to re-sign both Durant and Klay Thompson, that he expects to keep them both in, but we're all saying nice things to everybody right now while the tournament's going on. And we don't want anybody's feathers ruffled right now or anything like that, so we'll see how that changes as the playoffs bear out. Coaching, I think definitely coaching is going to go to Kerr just by virtue of the fact that he's been to the championship as a coach 5 different times. I don't know how good of a coach Drake is.
Yeah.
So.
You never know with that, but the crazy thing about Steve Kerr is he has not coached and not made the finals. I mean, he's been a coach 5 years, and he's been to the finals.
Been in the finals. Yeah.
So,
and like I said, he was there. Well, I think with Golden State, wasn't he? He was there 5 times with Golden State.
Yeah. So.
Or no. I mean, was it San Antonio? Who did he play for?
He played for Chicago because he was part of those Jordan teams.
The Bulls. For the Bulls. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So he's been.
I can't believe he's that old.
Not just as a coach, as a player, he's been. He's made a career out of playing in the finals, really. So.
Yeah, I think 10 times. I think it's the most by any player coach in the NBA is 10. That's 10 times. Yeah, but he knows nothing about, short of getting to the championship games or the finals of every NBA finals he's coached in. So I think you definitely have to give advantages there. But, we thought this is anything short of calling them an underdog, which I'm not going to do, again, out of respect for Toronto and all the fans in Hanna and the city up there. It's a great thing for Toronto. I mean, it means the world to them. And of course, this is a team that was originally founded co-part by Isaiah Thomas. Yeah. Yeah. He was one of the original owners in the Raptors. And so anything else to wrap it up? I mean, the thing now is just kind of sit back and let it play. I think the intangibles right now are the bench of Toronto and the leg of Kevin Durant are probably the two biggest intangibles that we're going to sit on and stew on until Thursday. Yep. What are your expectations? Yep. You expect Golden State to come out and make a mark right away, or do you expect the run of Toronto to get the first one? And I mean, I'm kind of leaning that I think Golden State would like to make a statement right off the bat if they get the opportunity to. It would be fairly deflating to come out and win the first game on the road because then there goes the home court advantage. It pretty well negates itself if they can keep it up. But what are your thoughts as we wrap up?
Yeah, I think I tend to agree with you. I think Golden State has always been very good at opening series, starting off strong. They did it against Portland last series, blew them out in game one. I think, like you said, they're going to want to get home court advantage away from Toronto. They only have to win one of the first two to do that, and I think they're more than capable of that. Ultimately, I just think Golden State is just too good. They're too experienced in the finals. A lot of Toronto's guys, this is their first trip to the finals. Outside of Kawhi Leonard, who's obviously been here before. I just the coaching, Kerr's been here. Pretty much everyone on Golden State's roster has been here. I think they have too many weapons. I think they're too deep. I think we'll see Golden State win this series. I think Toronto needs to hold the home court here. I have way more faith in Golden State going on the road and grabbing wins in this series than I do Toronto. But, the big thing, defense travels, I think, in the NBA more so than offense does. Toronto has a very, very good defense. They showed it last series. I think for them to have a chance in this series, they're going to have to continue to do like they did against Milwaukee, is rely on their defense, get stops, limit the offensive production of Golden State. And that's easier said than done, unfortunately, with how many different weapons Golden State has. It's just kind of how Toronto's luck has been. Last series, they get Milwaukee, who's the number one offense in the NBA during the regular season. Now they get Golden State, the number two offense in the regular season. So their defense is going to be tested. Golden State has been a challenge, most teams haven't been able to overcome. So we'll see what happens. I would expect to see Golden State winning yet another championship. I'm rooting for Toronto. I would like to see someone dethrone Golden State. I'm just not sure we're going to see it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I would root for Toronto, just not by any ill will toward Golden State. Just it'd be fun to see somebody else in there once. And the other team I think is going to learn from all this too is Milwaukee. I think Milwaukee comes out so much for the better, having gone. Nobody wants to learn a lesson the way Milwaukee's learned a lesson, but I think they take this situation that they got themselves into against Toronto, and I think they come out loaded for bear. They still are one of the best teams in the NBA. Yeah. And it looks like that team's, for the most part, going to stay together. So I think that they definitely are going to be a team to be reckoned and dealt with next year, as if they can keep Kawhi. I saw where I think an entrepreneur has offered Kawhi a penthouse apartment with all of his food and everything taken care of while he's there. So, no charge to him. I don't know if he's giving him the penthouse apartment or it's just on his to not pay rent on. So I don't know. Let's just focus on winning right now. So with that being said, where can you find us? You can find us just about anywhere podcasts are put up. Spreaker, Stitcher, iHeart, iTunes, YouTube, anywhere that you can find a sports podcast, you'll be able to find The Grueling Truth. You can also go to Facebook, to Twitter, and to, we don't do Instagram very much. We're available there as well. And all of our podcasts are put up on Facebook. You can find us there. You can go to our website at thegruelingtooth.com. And again, I want to thank MyBookie AG for graciously supporting us through this and providing us with an opportunity to bring good content on the air to you guys. And with that being said, Cole will be back Friday to review Game 1.
Yep.
There you go.
Yep, that should work.
So with that being said, let me see if I can get us out of here without blowing this thing up and unrecording everything we just recorded. It scares me just a little bit. But thanks for joining us. And we will talk to you later on this week, probably Friday, for no sense in bringing it up anymore. You'll get it hashed out on ESPN. I'm sure Stephen A. Smith will have some comments. Magic will have some comments.
Yeah, I'm sure they
Rob Pelinka will have some comments. We have not heard from LeBron James yet, so they'll all have comments. And Jeannie Buss will have comments. So away we go. Thank you for listening, and that wraps up today's show, Survive and Advance, on the Grueling Truth Sports Network.